Welcome to the UpLevel Podcast. Once again, my dear friend, Sunday Phillips. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's so great to be back.
Well, we couldn't start a new year without you and all the gifts that you bring. And as you know, and our listeners have just heard, the context that we're moving into this season is about right relationship, today's UpLevel. And I thought, there's no better person than to kick off the arc of this conversation with than you, specifically because you're going to take us to a place that, and you did this a year ago for us. So for folks who are building or have a relationship with the cosmos, with astrology, and how to use that as a tool as we begin to step into this new season, this new year, as well as for UpLevel, when we look at right relationship, how is working with the stars, the earth, Mother Nature, all of that part of being in right relationship. So this is why you are here to help us set the stage.
Amazing. I'm so honored and grateful to be a part of it and to be able to share again.
Well, let's just start with a question. How do you define this term, right relationship?
Such a good one. I feel like this resonates so much with my life philosophy, which is kind of what I coin a lot of my studies and my teachings around, is this art and science of living in rhythm, truly being in tune. So living in rhythm is my website name. It's, a couple of my handles. It's become this part of this way of life that I've adopted and adapted through my experiences of learning about myself and my connection to my environment and my community and the world around me at large, and how I can contribute and be the best I can be, obviously, but also to be one of the good folks that are, making positive contributions to the planet, And so the idea of relating to ourselves and our environment and our community in a right flowing way, a rhythmic way, to me stems from my relationship to my center, but also, again, my relationship to understanding these cycles, how life is waves and cycles. And if I understand this, then I can stay in tune and I can ride and adapt accordingly. And it becomes a really beautiful balancing act. But also, again, it's a fun way to just be engaged with life, with living.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And so from your perspective, what's important for us in this moment in time to be exploring right relationship?
Beautiful. So for me, it comes down to there's so much we could go into the depths of the astrological transits that are coming, and
we will.
Yeah, we will. And I don't want to bog it down too much with some of the logistics around it, but the big story of moving into 2025 is that we are in a new era. We are in we are entering into brand new territory. We're on the frontier right now. And so we are pioneering a new way of being. And it's a really fun time like that. For me, that sounds, it's heavy. There's a lot of heavy lifting and there's a lot of grieving, which we'll get into as well. But it's also fun and creative. And so part of moving into being in right relationship with ourselves, our community, our planet, and the main focus for this next year, I think, is following through with understanding the way that we show up ourselves, like being who we truly are, and understanding the way that resonates, reverberates, or the way that it communicates to the world around us. So it becomes this responsibility, taking responsibility for ourselves, and also being able to listen and tune in because it's new. And so if we come with an open heart and an open mind, and we're listening with our heart and we're listening with our ears and our eyes and our senses, then we can find new ways of being creative, new ways of approaching challenges or even creating new projects. I just have this, for as heavy as it all is, Christy, I am so hopeful for the future because I think that this energy right now is pushing us to be more creative than we've ever been. And you just, when you're under pressure and you're up against the wall, you can come up with some pretty powerful thing, life-changing things. So I'm excited.
And I can feel your emotion around that and see it. And so again, another reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you, because you're such a steward of your work. You live it, you breathe it. And it's very inspirational to have a leader like you on the planet who is hopeful in this moment, because we are recording this right on the tail end of 2024. It's going to drop on New Year's Day, 2025. So happy New Year, people.
Happy New Year.
And let's actually talk about some of the forecasts astrologically for folks. And for people who maybe this is a new tool to be using, give us a bit of context. What could be supportive in tuning in astrologically, specifically when we're looking at beginning an arc of a new year?
New beginnings are like new moons. It's a new cycle. And like I said, on top of the actual new year beginning, we have some really powerful astrological transits that are beginning again in this first half of this year. And one of the big ones starts on the first of the year, January 1st itself. So on Happy New Year, on New Year's Day, the north node of the moon is going to go to 0 degrees Aries. And what that is that the nodes of the moon are places in space where the eclipses happen. And hopefully people were tuned into the eclipses over the last 18 months, because we've had some pretty powerful eclipses over the last 18 months. I talked about that in our last sesh last year. It's really powerful that we're revisiting this 0 degrees Aries again. And it keeps coming up. It shows up again in March and then again in June this year. And what I want to say about 0 degrees is it's the beginning. And in astrology, we go from 0 to 29, making 30 degrees. And I'm always talking about like this, understanding the cycles is understanding that the beginning, middle, and end of every cycle. And so if you understand that you're in the beginning of a cycle, you would address it differently than if it was the middle or the end. You would approach it differently. And so just that alone is so powerful. But on top of that, it's in the sign of Aries tropically. And what that Aries represents, the very first sign of the zodiac, which marks the spring equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. And so in a lot of ways, people celebrate, people that study and understand astrology will celebrate spring equinox as the new year. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of getting the new year on the January 1st calendar year, which is really cool for me. I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting way to approach it. It's like we're kind of coming up on a spring.
Wow.
As the new year begins.
Okay.
And so you can really look. So just like you would do in spring, you're looking for the energy, you're looking for the life force. It's like, I live in the mountains. So when the snow, when there's snow all winter and then you see those first signs of life in spring, it's quite an enthralling experience, when you're tuning into nature. It's like to see the life come back. It always just fills the cup. And so we're beginning a lot of really powerful new cycles with this 0 degrees Aries this year. It has a lot to do with ourself too. And so when you look at the sign Aries in astrology, it represents the self, the actual inner light, the pilot light, as you would. It also represents that pioneering force, that beginning energy. And so for us to, it just having this year start off with this energy, it shows me that we have to prioritize ourselves. And as a sister, daughter, wife, cat mom, a steward of the earth, a teacher, a student, I find myself very aware of this more than ever, of just how important it is that I take care of myself, that I hold myself at the highest energetic levels that I can, at the highest vitality that I can, in order to serve my community, to serve my family, to serve my world.
Your purpose. Yeah.
Perfect.
Your purpose. And that to me feels like the core of right relationship it really does start with relationship to self. So bringing back the theme in. So astrologically, we are being asked to take better care of ourselves, to up level that type of focus and that relationship to self. Why? What is happening astrologically that's having that be the theme and focus for 2025?
So you might not remember this from our work together, but also from last year. I was really hitting, when I start talking about astrology, I just go back to the sun and moon. It's like sun and moon are foundational because they're the celestial bodies we can actually tune into, bear witness to on a very consistent, simple basis. We live it. And, so with that said, the eclipses are extremely powerful when it comes to looking at the chart. And over the last 18 months, we basically just came off of an 18, 20-year cycle where we've been working on restructuring, where we've been watching systems breaking down, where we've been watching the way we identify with ourselves being broken down and reconfigured, and people are really committing to like who they are and really unique ways, and seeing themselves unique within the collective. And that's been preparing us for this new era that we're in, where basically we're entering into this time where we want to uplift and acknowledge the unique within the collective. And so that said, you have to be strong in yourself to even be able to stand in a community, because you either, and we'll talk a little about this, I'm sure, later with some of our conversation around right relationship and in relationships with others. But it's an energy exchange where if I'm not holding my if my energy isn't strong enough, then I'm either going to lower my vibration and go with the flow and do whatever anybody else tells me to do.
Yeah.
Or I'm the opposite, is like, I want to bully everybody and get everyone to, do what I do and say what I say and be like me, so there's that angle. Or it's this place where we all harmonize and meet each other where we are and have like a true energetic exchange of like, it's all, I see you, you see, I am another you, where we really start to accept each other for who we are. And I get a little optimistic. Like I said, I'm hopeful. So I can see where we're in a place where we can actually make this happen. And it's going to take those of us that have been doing the work to actually start to implement that. And so another layer of the astrology that I just want to bring up around this too is this idea that with the eclipses that just occurred, they were in the axis of Aries and Libra, and that really brought us through this place where we were observing ourselves and then really looking outside ourselves and observing the other. And it's been like so loud, like people outside of me, I'll just speak for myself, but outside of my view of the world outside of me, it's like, if I go too big into the world, like into the city, because I live in the mountains. If I go big into the city, it's like, this place is loud, like everybody's throwing their weight around, and there's, so it becomes this thing around like, well, how am I responding to this? Or am I reacting? Am I taking offense? And so it becomes, I honestly feel like we've been going through this heavy lifting of like self-healing around the way we're responding to the world. And again, moving into 2025, my sister's saying thrive in 25. That's her mantra.
Love it.
And I love it. And so it's this idea where we've got to play and put it into action now. Like it's actually becoming a time where we got to start doing the dance, showing the work, and I mean, I think we've been doing it, but on a whole new level. It's like, okay, what have you learned?
Yeah. Let's see it. Well, and what I really heard in that, the piece around relationship to self, the reason why it's so important is because if you are self-harmonizing, meaning you are most aligned to your best version of you, you will then attract other people to partner with who harmonize. And maybe not always, but and if you don't, you'll be able to put your best foot forward and start to take responsibility for the way you are viewing and perceiving the world. Yes, it's a self-focus, but it's not a self-centered focus. It's going through self so that we can actually get to the other. Again, like right relationship. There's like
Powerful.
a flow here. Yeah. And so I'm seeing it in visuals. And I think a lot of folks that I've been talking to about 2024 it was a shakeup. It was fast, energetically fast. Most people had significant disruption in some areas of their world, their life. And that has then allowed for more of this self-reflection. Will I or will I not do the work? And so what you're saying now is, okay, that happened. Now you're harmonizing. So get to fucking work.
Totally.
Get to work. 2025, we're gonna go do the things, be the people that we were designed to be, because this is the up level that's needed right now.
Right now. So it's so needed. You got it, girl. The thing too that I've been feeling is, and you and I have talked about this, but a lot of, I've been seeing a lot of this, like, looking outside of the self, seeking, and it's one thing to research and study, but it's a whole nother thing to rely upon outside feedback, outside influence, outside sources to give me the thing I need. It's one thing when we're collaborating and we're uplifting. This is a difference. It's like, it's the UpLevel podcast. You're either going to uplift or you're going to lower. Or you're not going to do anything, right? It's like up level, baby. And so the idea really is how do I resource? How do I source this within myself so that it is very much about doing your work and taking responsibility in your own way and in your own unique way, every one of us. And I just feel like I think it's a little tricky because I can see it just like, even with the astrology is funny that way, and how folks will really depend upon the astrology or rely upon it as almost like an excuse, or as a default of, it's the planet Jupiter is not weighing on your, it's not messing you up.
Right.
Mercury retrograde, which we should talk about, like the Mercury retrogrades are really interesting too, especially when I talk to my friends in the corporate world of just like how important it is to understand that these cycles are happening, but to also to not like blame them or like hold yourself back because of them. And that's one example of the way that I see how people are like doing it outside, and it's like, it's an inside job. It always has been. And hopefully we find ourselves in this moment right now where we're actually ready. What I love is moving into the year, we're going to shift the axis will shift from Aries and Libra, which is the self and other, into the axis of spirit and matter.
Yes.
Virgo. So I've been like, spirit and matter, which in my head, I'm like, spirit matters. And so it's about the energy that we're putting. Where are we sourcing that energy and how are we using it? Because it's and then how will we get it back? Because the thing is if we're in a relationship, it's like this reciprocal, I'm getting chills. It's like this reciprocal, like we're feeding off each other. We're uplifting each other. We're all like, we're all healing and growing from it rather than like getting stagnant, putting each other down, all the things, So, spirit matters.
Yes. Spirit. Yes. Drop it like it's hot, Sister Sunday. Yeah. And that's just it. It's this, I reflect back to the portion of this year where I was on this 13-week detox and cleanse. And then I went deep into some energy medicine work and learning in a community. And that was the most profound time of the year for me. It was difficult. I was certainly being tested and challenged, but I was the most harmonized because of what I was inputting, not just like I was eating like food that has high vibration. I was being way more conscious of how I move, my body, my energy, who is in my sphere, what I'm taking in as far as media, and
powerful.
It was super. And then so I'm sharing that too for folks. It's like, we're talking about all of this and it's like, okay, cool. How do I operationalize it? So we can operationalize it by being very cognizant of what is my harmony, my frequency right now. And if I'm not feeling like uplifted, if I am feeling maybe lethargic or down, and maybe there is depression and anxiety, I know for me, I started just to really look at what was I consuming? What was I consuming on all the planes? And how do I need to shift that so that I'm more aligned to my best frequency, my highest frequency?
That's so deep and beautiful. Yes. The input output. This is like communication level 1, like input, output. And it is, it's like, and the next layer I want to add to that, which I love that you brought this up of just like the layers, is that it, for me, how we actualize this is through our sensory awareness. This goes back to like sensory development. So, foundational stuff, beyond being an astrologer, like I just love doing the embodiment work, the Pilates, the yoga, the meditation, the holistic.
So good at it.
It's so, thank you. I really appreciate that. I feel like the embodiment piece is so key when you relate it. So it's one thing to like understand how to tune into your core and find your center of gravity and speak from power from that place and organize yourself in that way. But to use the other senses, to be able to tune in from that place where you can have a heightened awareness. Like I said at the beginning, we're listening. If we could use our listening sense a little bit more through the different, like I almost put that as a filter on my other senses in order to go deeper into this. All right, what's this moment? How do I respond to this moment? Or what's this moment telling me? Or how is that making me feel? Right. So that I can address it accordingly. I do that through a sensory awareness practice. And I feel like that is going to be key, because I also feel like the more we do that, we develop the senses, our sensory awareness, we're going to heighten them. I mean, there is potential here for us to communicate and express on extremely high levels as far as like, I mean, you and I already do it. We could be communicating, it's like vibration, it's heart, I'm thinking about you, I'm sending you this heart message, you feel it, we catch it, these are real things. And so like the telepathy, the higher sensing of intuition and knowing on a really deep level is at our door right now. I mean, I feel like we can do this if we want to. And I feel like everybody, in a high, if you're functioning on a high level in an executive environment, and I feel like this is a superpower.
It's a superpower.
It's a superpower.
And some of the executives that I am working with, this is something this is the conversation. Like, what is the frequency that you're emitting right now? And is it aligned to your most, not just best self, but like the reason why you came here in this moment? And this practice you're talking about, if folks want to look back to a year ago to Sunday's podcast, you teach us that in that episode. You teach us how to actually embody that. And it's a great way to start the day. If you need to do it between meetings or like jump in a bathroom stall, if you're in person, and just, it's like taking a moment to be really aware of where your center is, to find it, to ground before you go into the next conversation, the next meeting. So then, like, take us to like what else is important for the 2025 arc, and in this context of being in right relationship with self, others.
So this is like next layer of that is just building on what we were talking about, like the spirit matters business. I love this. I read this phrase from this book, from one of my teachers a long time ago, that had to do with the way that we communicate, the way we are, the way you were even talking about, the way we show up, our embodiment, our presence itself is communicating. So as soon as we know that, as soon as we come to terms with that like, no matter if I'm not using words, my energy, my frequency is expressing a vibrational response, a
blueprint. It's having an impact. It's having
an impact. Exactly. Yeah. So so knowing that then too, it's one thing to understand how that works when you're involved with other people, but then again, in the actual applying it to coming into right relationship, it reminds me of this idea of how we're in an opportunity, like, because we're in this new era, this new time, and we can really recreate systems and build new pathways and roads to, we can do things differently. We really, really can. We've got to believe it. It's possible. And in doing that, if I'm understanding that my communication or my presence is communicating, then I'm out here like an artist playing with, like, how do I, so if I'm experimenting, I'm expressing ways that I'm experimenting through my expression and seeing what's the vibrational impact on that? How does it feel, And so, like, simple things are just like, I don't do it with people so much. I mostly do it with nature. Like, I love to connect with the trees. I never realized how much of a tree person I am. But like, I will, when I'm out gathering my firewood and this and that, I like touch the tree. I'm connecting with, and I don't know, like the wind might blow. I'm looking for synchronicity, basically. So like, as I'm doing these little experiments, I'm looking and feeling for vibrational or resonance in synchronicity. And sometimes this shows up, like, I might have brought this up last year. I don't know, but I bring it up a lot. But if you ever want like a fun study into level 1, Aquarian age stuff, the Celestine prophecy is it's a really great read. It's a story, but the way they tell the story is beautiful with the synchronicities and how, when you're in right relationship, the next right action, the next best step reveals itself. But a lot of times, because we're so distracted or caught up, we don't catch the synchronicities. We don't catch the messages. And so it comes back to that listening again. It's like I play and I do an experiment and then I wait for feedback and that reverberation to see, well, this feels good or that doesn't, maybe we'll wait for tomorrow on that one and, or I'll come back to that in an hour. It really has this effect of like being in the present moment again. It gives you a way to engage with the present moment on a really deep level. I've been having fun with it.
I just love the little girl in you, Sunday. She's so beautiful and so alive. Yeah. And that's what more of us like. There's an opportunity to activate more of that. And then this ability to listen deeply. We are actively training leaders how to listen more deeply, which is great. It's kind of like table stakes where we are in our human development and where you're pointing us. It's make a move and then listen. What's the impact? How does it connect? How does it land? Like I can just sit in a meeting, I'm leading the meeting and I share something and really listen as the information gets distilled into the other parties in the room before I just keep on with my agenda, keep on talking. Right?
Totally.
And so that's, and then I want to talk about the nature piece, because when I think about right relationship, I mean, this term does come from many indigenous cultures. Our indigenous brothers and sisters really understood how to live in right relationship with the world around them. And you and I said this last year. I said this in a lot of the episodes when we talked about leading through crisis, chaos, and change last year, that what's needed is for us to go back to where we've come from, to go back to the basics, to go back to living more connected to the earth and in more harmony with the earth. So what can you share with us about nature, the relationship to nature, including the cosmos, the stars, and right relationship?
I love it. Well, one of my, the moment that actually really triggered or set me on this path of living in rhythm, like putting all the little pieces together through living in rhythm was, actually my relationship, understanding a deeper relationship with the moon. And it started for me I was in the Navajo reservation doing some volunteer work at this permaculture project. And long story short, I was on my moon. I was on my period. And the leader of the circle of this program, he came to the group and was like, we're going to have a we're going to have a sweat lodge tonight. And he looked at me and he said, but women on their moon can't go in the sweat lodge. For one, I was shocked that he could even sense that I was, or he looked at me and it might've just been a thing, but
Yeah.
I was like, how did you know, and I was kind of like, I was bummed, but then he said, don't worry, we're going to set you in your own little tent and we're going to bring you food and we're going to bring you tea. And all night long while my other student friends were all in this sweat lodge having their own amazing experience, I was having my own self experience and having a relation, like getting to understand my relationship with the moon. And through that, like these elder women were talking to me about, I just have to give props to my older sister. She taught me about my cycle year, when I was young. She was so instrumental in helping me understand this. But when I was in my own personal sweat lodge, that's when I got into some deep conversations around understanding that the moon is within me and the moon is without me. And to understand that as above, so below, within, without, on a really personal level was so transformative. And when anybody asks this question, this is the thing I come back to: the sun and the moon if you want to go connect with the earth and the nature and the elements of water and smell the fresh air, see nature's gifts, trees, leaves, birds, and other animals, that's all wonderful. But one of the things that's really been helpful for me is understanding, again, that cycle of the sun and the moon. The sun rises and sets every 24 hours. Mm-hmm. The moon comes new every 29 and a half days approximately. Mm-hmm. When I understand the phases of the moon, how it goes from the new beginning to like a crescent, to a half moon, to then a full moon. And then it pulls back again. There's wisdom in that we can take into, again, it's that beginning, middle, end, understanding the cycle of nature. The cycles and the seasons will really help keep a pace and help us stay in timing and rhythm, where we can engage and do things and not feel like we're just subject to life's, experiences.
We're working in harmony. We're working in right relationship with what's here versus going against the grain, which a lot of these systems and structures that are falling down, that's why they're falling down, because they're not in right relationship with the natural flow of existence here on this planet. This might sound like out there for some folks, and we're inviting you into having an inquiry around your own cycles. Like Sunday's pointing us to their cycles within, and then there's cycles that those of us that work inside organizations, we are a part of. And a year ago too, we talked about getting curious about how those cycles are serving. One of the things we do at UpLevel is we do start our new year in the spring, because energetically, that's when we're ready to rock and bring out some new stuff. Now, we are going to bring out some new stuff in January, but it was really from an arc of last year of kind of starting it in April. So, that's
so cool.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you, I am so happy. Like that makes my heart smile to know that you are bringing it back to the natural cycles. I do think this is a revolutionary time. It's a new time. If you can recreate the systems in a way that brings people back to their center, back to nature a little bit more, the natural flow, I think you'll find production levels. I mean, I just feel like you're going to see such an increase in the benefits of just tuning in a lot.
Such an increase. And then, so for folks that are tuning into this and are inside organizations, start influencing that. Asking how come we do it this way, and what might be possible if we shift it to be more aligned to our natural rhythms. And I think we talked about this last year too. One of my I don't think you and I did, but I've told you about one of my peak work experiences was when I was on a team with a real conscious group of humans and people identifying as females and as males. And we would talk about where we were in our cycle. And males have a cycle as well as females. And we didn't get into all the nitty gritty, but what we did is we delegated the work based on where people were in their cycle. So if you're ovulating, guess what? You're the person doing the sales pitch. right?
This is incredible, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, this is what, this is the bridging the spirit and the matter. One of what UpLevel's like missions is really to awaken this type of consciousness inside organizations. Again, we're all at different levels of our development in this. So some people will listen and be like, this is a bunch of BS. I'm turning this off. And for those of you that maybe you've done it already, send us your story in because we want to hear about it. This is like, I get excited like Sunday does to celebrate these things. This is being in right relationship. We need to stop stepping over ourselves and our humanity and our natural rhythms. And we need to incorporate them and work with them. And it takes that listening, like you said, that deeper level of listening from leaders to create work environments that can include this.
Powerful. And so I'm getting chills again. It's, I've actually been working with a few more corporate folks and like you came into my life and now I've got a little bit more like, it's just interesting to see that that's happening and I'm excited and I welcome it. One thing I have noticed with those folks that are the big points, the thing that you can point out the most is watching the Mercury retrograde play out during these times in corporate.
Tell us about that. What happens?
It's like, in general, Mercury retrograde, Mercury is the planet of communication and expression. So it shows up in the business realm big time where, a lot of people will say like, oh, you might have tech issues or you might have miscommunications or like the email didn't get sent or the memo didn't get scheduled, or the meeting didn't get it's all these funny little things that slip through the cracks or it's all it's like little fumbles in communication when we're pushing forward when it's retrograde where we need to either be still or tune in, like this is where you slow it down a little. You don't have to push so hard during these times. And so that's something I suggest for people in that time. If you're in a corporate environment, to just recognize that these points happen. We can't not go to work and do our thing. But what we can't understand is just like with a cycle, like if someone's in the beginning of a cycle, they might just be, you might need a little more time. Versus like you were talking about, if someone else is, depending on where you're at in that phase. And so with the Mercury retrograde, understanding that it just takes a little more time. Let's reread that. Like, let's reproof that copy one more time.
Yes.
Double check your dots and dot your I's and your T's or cross your T's. It's just, you want to go through those, do a little bit of double checking. Don't rush to get it off. Maybe don't, it's okay if you want to, schedule things and make things happen, but recognize that it might move a little slower. And in doing that, it just creates so much more ease in the flow of it all, where it's like, okay, this is Mercury retrograde. It happens 3 to 4 times a year. So like once a quarter.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's like, if you can really see that this is a thing that happens, then it doesn't become this weird jagged thing that you're pushing against,
I started tracking it about a decade ago, just out of curiosity, kind of like you said, like as an experiment. And I noticed, I'm like, oh, wow, it's harder. The communication's harder right now. Or if I was traveling, the flights get canceled or my bag gets lost. Things like this, contracts, if I did sign them during that time frame, something always came back, like that I had missed or that wasn't in there. So it's this invitation, like you're saying, to slow down, which again is living in rhythm with this natural occurrence that happens once a quarter. This planet's moving backwards so that everything, not just humans, but everything on the planet can like be in retrospect. Like what it's the value of being in retrospect. For many of us, we'll take this time as we enter a new year to reflect on the year before and then to, start to design what's ahead. So nature actually designs this for us on a quarterly basis because it's so powerful. And so like, we're like, Sunday's pointing us to, there's a structure in place. We don't have to like get all, like there's a structure in place. So find out when the Mercury retrogrades are, and you don't even have to talk to people about it, but just institute, this is a time where we're going to reflect. How are the goals moving forward? what needs to shift or be adapted. And let's get a little bit slower during this time frame. Maybe we don't make any big decisions during this time frame. We definitely have adopted that at UpLevel too, and it's helpful. My partner, who doesn't follow this as much, and it's part of it's her faith, but she started to track it. She's like, wait, is that Mercury going backwards again? Because stuff's going down. I was like, yes, sister, Mercury's around. She's like, oh my gosh, every time. So it's amazing. It can be a lot of fun to introduce into a team and to play with these natural cycles. And like you said, like you're in an experiment together.
Yeah, I love that. And you bring up something important too about just like how and you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but this idea of understanding the word polarity came up when you were talking. I was thinking about that idea of polarity and or friction, even when things feel like they're not flowing or you're up against something or somebody doesn't understand you or they're there's the polarity is there. We live on a polarity planet. And I feel like this is one of the things that, back to that tuning into our senses, we can really embody, we can practice the embodiment of understanding polarity, and that it doesn't have to, not everything has to be this thing that I have to react to so much or brace up against or push back on. It's like to really tune in and understand okay, what, I think that's how I look at the Mercury retrograde. Is my point is like, I feel like sometimes it feels a little, for me, I was not born with Mercury retrograde, so it feels pretty like friction. A little side note, people born with Mercury retrograde kind of roll in that time.
Yeah.
And, so again, you want to put them at the head, you might want to put those folks at the head of the charge that week or that couple weeks. But this idea of when I feel that opposition, that polarity coming in, I have a choice. And this is what we're like, that back to the responsibility thing. It's like, how am I going to take this? Am I going to absorb it and let it ruin my whole day? Am I going to push back and fight? Or do I get to be a little bit more neutral? Use my senses, tune in, meet the moment. It's good. I think this is actually a really big skill for us leaders to step into more moving into 2025, into 2027. Like the next 3 years are like leadership boot camp or something. Like in my notes, but
that's good. And like the past 4.5, 5 years haven't been, but like, and this is good from an astrological standpoint. Like we are really going to go deeper into it now. So if people are like, I'm like saying this in general, right? People are like, oh, I'm so tired. I am so tired. And I know there's such fatigue because there's fatigue. We have been in it, folks. And if you're listening to this, it's resonating. That's what I believe. And so you've been in it. And what Sunday said, it's going to get dialed up. It's going to get dialed up. And that's why relationship to self and then relationship to other, where you're pointing us, it's in our deep listening and our ability to respond versus react, from a more authentic, aligned, clean, clear self. So like, that's where we're headed. That's 2025. But like there's other arcs happening in 2025. What else do you feel is important for us to know?
Okay, so part one, that's so incredible. I love that you brought up like the last like leadership boot camp that started in like really Christmas Eve 2019 is when we all like signed. Leadership boot camp really started, and we crossed the threshold on January 12th astrologically. We have been, if you didn't listen last year, and if I didn't say it yet, which is kind of fun to say again, is that we are living through unprecedented astrological transits. There are alignments that have been occurring since January 2020 that no human on earth has lived through. So that's wild.
That is wild. And this is why Sunday is here. Drop this wisdom.
Yeah, that is some wild stuff. So again, we're on new terrain right now, which is a new era. And we've kind of been breaking stuff down the last 4 years, and we're in the early phases of starting to figure out how to put some stuff back, rebuild. And in a way that's, not like the old way. It's not like that. It's gone. And so moving into 2025, March is a very pivotal month. that's where the first eclipses in the spirit matters axis happens. And so that first eclipse is March 13th, 14th, depending on where you live. It's a lunar eclipse, which means it's a full moon. It's a total lunar eclipse. So depending on any people in North America will be able to see it. But that one, so March 13th and 14th, we get the first eclipse occurring in that spirit matters phase. And that's lingering for that's going to hold sway for the next year and a half, like 18 months approximately. And so that's a really potent thing. On top of that, on the 31st of March, Neptune is going to be entering from 29 degrees Pisces, which is the last degree of Pisces, into the first 0 degrees of Aries for the first time in 165 years.
What? And so then what does that mean? Like, what the heck does that mean? Yeah.
So basically, the way I'm relating to it is that back to what I was saying earlier about that 0 degrees Aries, it's the beginning of the cycle. It's the beginning of the recommitting to ourself. It's a reunion with ourself. And Neptune is very much about the spirit. It's about consciousness. That's where the word spirit roots from, in that axis of spirit, and material is the Virgo energy. That's the sign that moon will be in on that eclipse. But so it's the axis of Pisces and Virgo, which is spirit and material matter, or consciousness and super consciousness, healing. These are all keywords for this axis. But so Neptune being at home, it's been at home in the sign of Pisces for the last 16 years, I think. And I wish I would have wrote that down, but it's okay. But it's been a little bit longer than 16 years, I think. But regardless, it's been at home, and now it's going into, it's like leaving home, leaving home for the first time in 65 years into the sign of Aries.
This feels so big deal. Like,
it very much is. It's sort of like we talked about this in our last episode together, where Pluto went into Aquarius for the first time in 248 years.
Yeah.
So now we're really living that, and we're entering into new territory with that. But with the Neptune tuning in, if you see the symbol for Neptune, it looks like a tuning fork or a triton.
Okay.
It reminds me of a tuning fork. It's how do I attune my senses, connecting it to source or spirit, right? How do I get my spirit to connect with source in a way where I'm feeling conscious, I'm feeling enlightened, I'm feeling connected to all that is. I'm able to, I'm not feeling outside of it. I'm feeling with it, one with it, in unification with all that is. It's a very spiritual sign, to be honest. And a lot of it, like in the past, I think it had marked revolutions in religion and religious aspects. But I feel like this right now, because we've been so honing in on our ability to uplift each other and see that all of us can have our own unique. I think it's like a revolution in consciousness and spiritual consciousness, in a way where, again, the leaders are going to be asked to be able to tune in on heightened levels. This isn't just like bring your notes to the board meeting, show up and do what you can. It's like show up and be in tune on all levels at your heightened human potential. I mean, we really have opportunity to do that.
And that takes us to the next level of listening. We again, in our trainings, we talk about this. It's like tuning in level 3, level 4. So like level 1, you're listening to yourself. Level 2, you're listening to the other. Level 3, level 4, it's like global listening. This is where you're tuning into the environment. You're using your sensories, your intuition, and that is what's required. Okay, so then why would it look to some, this is not everyone's perspective, but to some, it would look like in parts of the planet right now that humanity is just like crumbling, and we're seeing like the worst of humanity and like the behaviors that are just like, so if what's coming is this higher level of leadership, this higher level of using our natural abilities, what the fuck's happening?
Really good question. Wow. That's a good question, and a big question. And you know what my first response is like, it's the polarity. It's like for as much good or as much bad as polarity. And that's kind of the thing is like right now we're working, humanity is really learning its lesson in polarity. It's and it's like the diamond thing. It's like for all the pressure of all the stress and all the we've been under for the last 4 or 5 years now, it's culminating into this like diamond. It has to. Where else is the energy going to go? We don't, and so for me, true leadership actually that's what it represents, is this heart-centered middle way path. It's like you're not too far in any direction. It's a centered middle, heart-centered path. And so in that regard, like the more of us that are coming to terms with that, and maybe we're not holding it all day, but we're tapping into it throughout the day, and we're playing, it's new. We're having to experiment with this. So the more practice we get with it, the more we might see that polarity of, maybe of the opposite, and it's the last throes of the patriarchy. There's, as it's dying off, it's trying everything it can to keep the power. And that's again why we have to build strength and fortitude in ourselves to not be reactionary, to not be, to be able to persevere in those times where it feels heaviest, But how do we do that? It doesn't mean I got to grunt and grind through it, but it's like, how do I take care of myself? It goes back to that self again, like honoring our rhythm and our needs. It's like, you know what, guys, I'm going to need a timeout. You know what, I'm going to take that, and like, there's ways to do it where it works where you won't throw off the whole crew or whatever, or the whole team. But to truly understand that, like, this comes back to, again, how do we take responsibility for how we're showing up? Because what I do know to be true about the energy transfer also is that, like I said it earlier, you can be, this is in the Celestine prophecy too, which I love, but it's like, you can hold, like, I'll hold my energy, and then I walk into a room and I keep a nice balanced, neutral, like, graceful energy. And then someone comes in, blah, 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 like carrying on, having a worst day of their life, trying to bring else down. And I can either go down to that and wah, 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 wah down there in that space with them. And then again, we get this reciprocal thing where we're giving each other energy instead of taking away or having to pull up.
Brilliant.
And we have to keep practicing this all day with the people we love, with the people we work with the people at the grocery store and on the road and everywhere else.
Yeah. And, on social media, right? Like all these places where polarity is just showing its beautiful self. Right. And I love that. That goes back to taking responsibility for what are you omitting around you? Like, what is the frequency you're creating, and how can you hold a higher level of consciousness so that that's going to call others into it. And so I want to talk about grief, because what I'm noticing, what I'm experiencing as I enter this new year is a real awareness of some of these behaviors that I've used for my life as coping mechanisms that have helped me survive. And I'm really aware that I've worked on them, but I'm really aware that it's time to really, really surrender and let them go. And so there's this tremendous amount of grief I notice as I'm in this in-between time between the year and reflecting. And there's some like, I'm going to have to let go of parts of myself, of relationships with potentially others, just again, ways of being that will not help me or humanity. And I feel sad. I feel sad about it. And I'm curious from a collective astrological place, what you can tell us about that, because I know I'm not the only one in that place.
So God, I feel it too. You're not alone. I feel it too. That's perfect segue into the next major transit that I wanted to bring up, which is on what date is it? Oh yeah, May 25th.
Oh, 5 days before my birthday.
I know. All those Gemini week, I tell you what. But the May 25th, Saturn moves in to the sign of Aries, 0 degrees Aries, there it is again, for the first time in 29 and a half years.
Ooh.
So I like to say these things too, because as one of the gifts of having more time on the earth is being able to look back at the cycles and how you handled the last cycle so that you can do this one better. There are threads that are being woven right now through time and space that you can look back on your life and get some insight into how to handle this next wave pattern, so to speak. So just looking back, maybe you don't have that many years to look back through, but it's something to think about. But if you can think back for 29 and a half years, what sort of focus and intention you were setting, that there's a lot of insight in that. But what the thing about Saturn is like it's the planet that has all these rings going around it. It is so disciplined. Or basically, I do feel like it's dredging up a lot of grief and pain from our past. Like the Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. Aries is the beginning. So for Saturn to kind of be coming through this end of the zodiac and cleaning up the spirit, basically restructuring, all that stuff I was talking about Pisces represents and Neptune represents is this spiritual consciousness, my connection to source. It's I feel it in myself. I found myself over the last couple of years sourcing in new ways because I have to, not because I wanted to and it was all fun and games. No, it was because I have to.
Yeah.
And that alone brings up the grief and the pain and it's drudging up resistance, the places where we've been holding back.
Yeah.
And so I feel like with how you're in my heart and mind, you're like the queen of helping people learn their emotions. What would you tell somebody? You would tell them to feel it.
Yeah.
Right. To feel into that and to allow it what's so beautiful about it is that it becomes nutrient for the soil, for the new growth. And so I just feel myself letting go. And, one of, it's kind of funny. I had a song coming up in my head when you were talking.
Because that's how one of the ways your intuition works. It comes in songs. Yeah,
it does. It sure does. And it's a Stevie Wonder song from the Songs of the Key of Life, and it's that they won't go when I go. It kind of has a lot. It represents death a little bit, but I think it's deeper than that. And it's a really beautiful song. It's
sing us just a bit of it. Give us a little tunage.
Gosh, he's naming all these things, and it's they won't go when I go, I'll go, and it's this. It feels to me like of this moment of reckoning of like I have to keep going. I'm about to start crying now. I have to keep going.
Yeah,
I can't expect people to. It doesn't mean like it can mean death, but it can also mean so much more of just like I have to keep moving forward, regardless of like my path is calling me forward. Every step I have to keep taking the next right action step in order to fulfill my destiny. And that's, I think, one of the last lines of that song. My God, those lyrics are so powerful, Christy.
It's beautiful. And thanks for giving us a little bit of your beautiful voice, which is so healing to hear you sing. And what this is reminding me of, this was one of my big lessons of 2024 is we don't have to always leave relationships, but we can leave behind dynamics. This was like a teaching from the energy medicine from a shaman I've been working with. And this was so liberating because part of the grief is thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to blow this all up. And maybe you do, because maybe that is what has you be in right relationship to all the beautiful things you were just saying, Sunday, like your own purpose, your own path and destiny. Or maybe there's a dynamic that is present within a relationship that is no longer serving you or the other person or the other people. And it's time to say goodbye to that. Let that go. And that I know. And I'm just like, I'm so new to this teaching and I wouldn't say I'm fully practicing yet. I'm still in the old paradigm of, if something's not aligned, I have to end it. I have to blow it up. And is that true? And in some contexts it is, but what if we look at the dynamics and say that dynamic is no longer serving the true expression of relationship to self, relationship to other, relationship to whatever the bigger thing is for you? So can we consciously complete with it? Can we have some kind of ceremony to say, this cycle we find ourselves in, or I'm in with myself, beating myself up for something, or this, can I consciously complete with it so that the new form of relationship can emerge?
This is so powerful because what you're talking about is really speaking to this other concept I've been integrating and practicing, and just this idea of working with my frequency and my energy and understanding the outside, the others, and the way their frequency and energy works, and how, back to what I was saying earlier about like sometimes we meet and everything's all great. Sometimes the person doesn't elevate, right? Or I'm not ready to elevate.
Right.
Right. It's like, and so in that moment, in that moment of the polarity, what do you do? Well, it doesn't mean it's forever, right? It's about, I love that you're talking about this dynamics. It's like, it just has to shift a little bit. And what I'm really starting to understand, which I'd heard for so many years, but now I'm like living it, is this idea that the energies match. And like, if it's not the right frequency right now for you, it will go away. It has to. That's how we evolve. And it doesn't mean forever necessarily. It can be, but it also can be a really gracefully just letting it flow out, like letting it flow away, letting it blow away like a breeze. It doesn't have to be this like, let's blow it up. Although sometimes that feels really good too.
Oh,
right. But like some people just like to start fire and go for the,
yeah. That's been my track record. I don't tell you that much.
Some people quote, right.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, when we really understand that our, if I'm working on a presence or a frequency level that I'm working on. And it's just like at any given point, the people that I need to work with me and collaborate in that realm are going to be magnetized and drawn in, and it's going to feel good and the vibes are there. And it's like, that's how it's that synchronicity thing. Yes. But when the synchronicities aren't there and the energies aren't jiving, to just shift we talked about this last year, to just do the little pivot, right? You just have to shift a little bit to the left, to the right, up, down, doesn't matter. Like there's no judgment around it. To just like change the dynamic, change the way the perspective. And before you know it, it's like, you're not hurting people and you're not, severing ties for all, eternity. It becomes a thing of like, well, when we're in right relationship,
yes,
we'll align again.
And, inside organizations, this year, 2024, we really deployed what we call the Designed Alliance. And I love this concept. It is about consciously designing the relationship. We do it in organizations where we talk a lot about role to role. Here are the projects. Here's who's responsible for what. These are the results we're after. Here's the timelines. And then we step over the human to human component. Who do we need to be to achieve what we just spoke about? How will we be with each other when shit goes off the rails? It's going to. So let's have a conversation up front about it. How do you bring out the best in me? How do I like to receive feedback or be coached? And whether you're like a manager and direct report, you're both sharing that so that we're finding more of this like right relationship. It's not the, old school paradigm of leadership, because in a more harmonized environment where we are in right relationship, we are all growing each other and learning from each other. So consciously designing the relationship is mission critical. And we'll talk a lot about that in 2025 through UpLevel. Actually, on January 29th, we're going to have a community event where we're going to demonstrate that live. Like Rachel and I are going to design our relationship ongoingly. I mean, we're always designing it. So I'm just getting so excited. I just love talking.
This is cutting edge. This is cutting edge what you're talking about right now. And the fact that you're changing, and those are the listeners that are here and have been committed. And I heard you got some awards this year, and I'm psyched for you guys because you're doing the good work and you're cutting edge. You're making a path, and it can be lonely on that edge, these up-leveled leaders in this time. And that's why it is important to have resources like this and to figure out where we can, how we can uplift, keep the vibes growing and uplift one another. And I just feel like taking, again, like we're in this new era, we're looking for new ways of showing up and moving our, like evolving our world, evolving our planet, living on this planet. And it's just like, it's kind of when I put it like that, it's a big responsibility. But
it is.
At the same time, it's like, we're all here for it. I mean, this is what we came here for, I'm pretty sure. And especially if you're even like, if you even consider yourself a leader, which, I mean, I know that the people that are listening do. So I just feel like for those of us that are actively participating and willing, it's a really fun time to experiment and to play and see how we can show up and redesign this world that, and make it fun. Like the corporate world doesn't have, let's revamp the MO around that thing, make it great so that we can, so that people can excel, and not just like excel on a financial or like a structural, corporate level, but like as a human level, and to impact their society and their community and, their products and their services. It's just like, golly, the potential is immense right now for that growth.
So, I mean, that's a great kind of bottom line, a synthesis of why being in right relationship is so important. Like you've just dropped all those nuggets, and you've given us such good context into how we could leverage astrology as a tool for ourselves this year. Some demarkers to look for, as we move forward. We could plan for it consciously so that we can be in right relationship with it, working with it. What else feels important to you to share as we bring our conversation to close today?
I'm so glad you're asking, because I brought up the time frame around the Saturn, which is like a long time frame. Not everybody can go back 29 and a half years. Yeah. But the last time we entered into this spirit matters axis, we were right here. It was around 2006. Basically, if you can look back at your life between 2006 to 2004 to 2009 is a good window of any common threads or themes that were being carried out. There's wisdom in that's returning, being revisited in a new way coming up in this next 18 months. You could also go back to, for like the 18 to 20 year cycles, basically. And so then you could also go back 9 to 10 year cycles. So 2014 to 2017, 2018, 2019, this era, you can kind of go back. It's like we're creeping up on this moment where, so there's the way that why I'm referencing those dates specifically is this has to do with that eclipse cycle again. And the eclipses really that sun and moon cycle are there for us. We get a lot of information from them. So if you can kind of see a common thread in your life at those time periods, to maybe starting to show itself a little bit now, this is a moment where you're getting a little hint on how you can manage this new cycle, this new wave more effectively or more efficiently. And I see it in my life that the theme it's actually kind of astounding how the themes reoccur. And so I would just say that like it's about that self-reflection, and that's knowing thyself is one of the best tools that we can move into this 2025 in order to bring our best essence, our best presence, and allow the energy to be what it is so that we can manifest what our goals and our mission are. And this is really like, it is about that soul, like point your ship toward the soul mission. It's time, like all aboard, baby. We got to do some stuff we got to prove it this year, show the work. So it's time. It's time. So align ourselves. And so, you know what? If you could let people know if you're available for readings or what type of support you might provide, because a lot of folks are listening to this and be like, great. And how do I do that? And how do I leverage this type of information to align to my soul purpose? I love that. I really enjoy working one-on-one with folks. So I do a lot of one-on-one consulting and I do one-on-one sessions within
Amazing.
Thank you. We have a lot of fun. But I do embodiment sessions, so we can work with the, rooted in Pilates and yoga and meditation. We can work with just like how your embodiment is showing up. We can look at the astrology, your personal astrology. I'm also starting to put myself back out there and doing some more group, so like if you have a corporate event or something that you want to work with the team, I'm all for working with teams and helping them build the team, build the team connection through understanding the relationship of not necessarily everybody's astrology one-on-one, but to really understand the nature of the living in rhythm within the core unit of a group. So I'm interested in doing things like that. And I'm also in the process of building a course, which will be an interactive course that I've been slowly but surely building, that I'm going to launch here.
Yeah, you are.
So you
2025, Mr. Sunday.
Yep.
I want to see that course. I want to come to that course.
3D proof, baby. It's happening. So there's coursework, there's group work, there's one-on-one work. And then I also have, I'm going to be relaunching my season 2 of my podcast called Living in Rhythm.
It's so good, listeners.
That's coming out. And I've done a bunch of reformatting with that too, where I'm looking to, again, I'm finding new ways of sharing this stuff so we can actually brass tacks.
Make it real.
Practical application, baby. Practical application. So we can actually, start to work these things instead of just like talking about them and contemplating them and reflecting, which is all great too. We want to do that, but we also want to show our work and do the embodiment pieces. That's what's calling me the most right now. So, and you can find me on at my website, Sunday Phillips, or livinginrhythm.com. And then my YouTube channel is Living in Rhythm. So.
Amazing. And all of this will be in the show notes. Sunday, thank you for being such a living example of living in rhythm and of spirit and matter. Thank you for helping UpLevel really shape why we're here, why we exist, and being a steady partner to us and bringing your unique gifts and medicine. I feel like this is like our annual, and it sets the stage, and
I'm so honored.
So thank you so much for being with us and for all the wisdom that was dropped. And for our listeners, check out Sister Sunday if you haven't already.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, what an honor. And cheers to all of you listeners. I hope you have fun playing with some of this stuff next year. And I wish you all success and lots of love.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.